Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and today we're going to look at the Motorola Droid Razr M on Verizon. This is Motorola's latest smartphone on Verizon, and it's a lot like the Razr, but it's only $99, and we're going to look at it now. So the Droid Razr M is available today on Verizon Wireless. It's $99 with a contract, and you get a lot of phone for the money. Basically, in a lot of ways, you're actually getting last year's Droid Razr for half the price, in fact. Same QHD Super AMOLED display. Now, some people may complain, Super AMOLED, it's pentile, my God, I have awesome eyes and I can see the dots in the text, that kind of thing. But I think for most folks, it's just going to look like a very color-rich, vibrant, high-contrast display, and it's quite nice looking. At 4.3 inches, this is a QHD display. That means 960 by 540 pixels, so you're not looking at one of those 1280 by 720p high-end phones that go for $199 on U.S. carriers. But look how small the bezel is. There's like no bezel. It's really cool to see that on a smartphone. We're getting used to seeing that on some higher-end monitors and TVs, but smartphones, usually we have quite a bit of bezel just to reinforce the phone and make it stronger, if nothing else, and also to make room for all the circuitry and internals. So Motorola has pulled off quite the design feat here by allowing you to get a big old 4.3-inch display in a small-size casing. And we're going to compare it to the Droid Razr on Verizon so you can see the difference. Hard to believe that this big phone here has the same display as this little phone here. And from the front view, maybe the size difference isn't so dramatic, but once we turn them around and you see the back, I think it's really going to look more pronounced. So there you have it. Same display size, much smaller casing. In fact, this is just a little bit taller than the iPhone 4S. And for size comparison, we now have the iPhone 4 in here, so you can see just a little bit bigger. In terms of width, we're looking at about the same thing. So for those of you who find today's huge screen Android smartphones just too wide for your hand and not comfortable, the Droid Razr M should be a good fit. And lastly, we've brought in the Motorola Atrix HD here. Now this guy does have a little bit bigger display. You're talking 4.5-inch full HD 1280 by 720p display, and it is the biggest of the trio. Now otherwise, the Atrix HD and the Droid Razr M have a lot in common in terms of kind of the updated design brought down to the mid-range market. When I say that the original Razr had a really nice look. I particularly like the sharp edges here, the metal around the frame. It was a daring design, certainly, the pronounced curve over here, the Kevlar back. I liked it a lot. Some people thought maybe it was a little too much, but there's that. Now, when we look at the Atrix HD, you can see we have rounded corners and a kind of muted plastic around the edges going on. And we've got the same thing going here for the Droid Razr M. Plastic rounded edges, we've got a little pinched chin here, and it's a less aggressive, less striking design, I think. Now as we look around the phone, you can see we have that Kevlar back going on, and overall the design language still is what I would call the Droid Android kind of look. This area here by the camera is very reflective. Why they do that, I don't know. I find it aesthetically not too thrilling, but that is what it is. We do have an 8-megapixel shooter back here with an LED flash. That's nice. And there's our speaker grill right next to it. Motorola logo. Sealed design, so once again the battery is sealed inside. This has a 2000 milliamp battery, so a little bit better than the original Razr, certainly less than the Droid Razr Max, which had a 3300 milliamp battery. On the side here we have our volume control and our power button. You can see these are the Torx screws that are actually exposed that hold the casing together. It's kind of interesting when you can actually see how the thing is held together. Up top, we don't have the blunted top that we had on the original Razr line where the ports were. We just have our headphone jack up here. And on this side we have our micro USB port. There is no micro HDMI port built in. Really, there's not a lot of room in the casing for that. And we have a door here, and that is for our micro SIM card slot and our micro SD card slot that's compatible with cards up to 32 gigs. The Razr M is an LTE 4G phone with 3G EVDO Rev A, has a mobile hotspot feature, and it runs Android OS 4.04 Ice Cream Sandwich. It will get an upgrade to Jelly Bean by the end of the year. You would think it would be a little quicker than that now that Google owns Motorola, but that is what it is. They do promise that you will get that upgrade. The phone has 8 gigs of internal storage, and you can use a micro SD card to expand storage. And it runs on a 1.5 gigahertz dual-core Snapdragon S4 CPU. That's the latest, greatest CPU available on US smartphones, and it's quite fast. Score is 4668 in quadrant, which makes it competitive with other phones running the same CPU. and it manages 55 frames per second in the Egypt off-screen test in GL benchmark. Again, that's competitive with other high-end phones. So in terms of horsepower, you're looking at the same thing here as the $199 phones on various US carriers, including Verizon. Not giving up anything in terms of that. What you are losing, again, is that little bit of screen resolution, since we're looking at QHD right here. A little less internal storage since it's 8 gigs. The phone does have NFC, and it has dual band Wi-Fi 802.11 ABGN. It's nice to have dual band Wi-Fi there. Reception for us has been good on Wi-Fi. Bluetooth 4.0 LE, the usual GPS is here as well. And your standard ambient light sensor, proximity sensor, gyroscopic sensor, all those good sensors are there. In terms of user interface enhancement, this is not so different from the Atrix HD, and it's a toned-down version of what we saw on the original Droid Razr. We have our standard home screen here. You get the little widget that gives you the clock, it gives you the weather, and it shows you your battery and a numerical value, which is always handy. And if you want to add more home screens, it doesn't start you out with a whole bunch of them and, populate them with a lot of junk. It lets you pick. You can go with the standard template. You can go with the blank page. We'll choose one of those, and we can pick which apps we want to have populating there and widgets to start with, and we'll just pick that one. You can go with the vanilla one, then drag the stuff of your choice on there also. And if we drag in the other direction, I really like this. This is new. Here it just switches right over to commonly used settings. You can see we've got Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, GPS settings, mobile data setting, airplane mode, phone lock, and then a shortcut to get to all of your settings. I like that a lot. Also, you can do the typical Android thing here, and this looks pretty clean, pretty close to vanilla ice cream sandwich. Any notifications would show up here, and you can tap on the little wheel to get to all of your settings. Obviously, there's no capacitive touch buttons down here. We have software buttons at the bottom. Again, that's going with the ice cream sandwich convention. I expect that Motorola will continue to go with the spirit of Google operating system now that Google does control them. If you want to see all your applications, you tap that little button in the middle, and there they all are. And with Verizon's partnership with Amazon, we've got all the Amazon apps here. We've got the Amazon Store, we've got Amazon Kindle, we have Amazon MP3 loaded, and we have the usual selection of Verizon applications on board. So we've got our VZ Navigator over here, we've got our voicemail application. We've got My Verizon Mobile, the handy mobile hotspot thing that makes it easier for you to turn the phone into a wireless mobile hotspot. And in terms of other applications, we have Quick Office here, and that can view, edit, and create MS Office compatible documents, not just a viewer. That's nice. Chrome is the default browser, you can see that, and the regular Android WebKit web browser, variously marked sometimes as web or internet, depending on the device. That's not here, and that's probably another Googleism, shall we say, because they want everybody to move over to Chrome. With Jelly Bean, you will just get Chrome on your device. You won't be getting the old web browser anymore. And in part, I think they're doing that because Chrome doesn't support Adobe Flash at all. So even if you sideload Adobe Flash, you won't get it. You'll have to use a third-party browser, like Firefox or something like that, and sideload and tinker around if you want to get that Adobe Flash back. We have a file manager on board as well. All the standard Google applications, Google Play Store, Google Play Music, Google Books, Google Movies, Maps, YouTube Player, and Search. And we have the Zappos application loaded. Goodness knows, I guess that's because that's an Amazon-owned company there. So for you folks who like to shop for purses and accessories, I guess that'll be very exciting to choose. The phone feels fast and is fast. Again, it's a pretty lightweight skin on top of there, and you're looking at the latest, greatest in terms of CPU. It has a gig of RAM, and it's certainly up to the task of playing today's demanding games and HD video, no problem there. As you can see, the phone dialer is pretty much your standard ice cream sandwich interface here. Large numbers, easy to use, high contrast. You've got shortcuts to your recent calls and your favorite calls right here. And when we're in a call, as we are right now, you have access to your dial pad right here, your speaker, your mute. Add another call in. And we'll hang up on port 611. Reception on the phone, we come to expect a lot from Motorola phones. They have really good reception, generally speaking. This one is just average among Verizon phones. It's not to say it's bad, it's just not a stunning RF phone. Perhaps the fact that it does have such a small casing leaves less room for long antennas. Voice quality is good, and we expect really good voice quality from Motorola. And again, we got average voice quality from this. It's pretty good. It's certainly not going to be a problem when you're trying to understand your caller or they're trying to understand you, but it's not the sharpest and clearest phone that we have ever heard. Motorola Atrix HD on AT&T is actually a little sharper sounding, and I would say that the Razr Max also is a little bit sharper and clearer sounding. Motorola's smart actions are on board, as they are with all Motorola Android smartphones, and this is pretty easy to love. You can set a whole lot of essentially action macros. So say you plug in your headset, it'll automatically launch Google Play Music. Depending on time of day, you can set it to be quiet so it doesn't wake you up in the night with syncing sounds and all that. And you can have workout sounds, battery saver, a lot of different things here, and you can customize all these. So good stuff there. In terms of data speeds, you can see what we got, which is pretty good among Verizon phones. Our high point was a little over 20 megabit per second down, averaging around 8.5 to 9.5 up, and we had one incredibly poor result, which was in an area that had very, very poor reception down here. And by very, very poor, I mean still 3 megabit down and 1.9 up. Not too bad. Not too bad at all. For the web browser, we have, as I mentioned, Google Chrome on board. Since it's QHD and 4.3 inches, you're not going to have that giant 4.8-inch experience that you would on something like the Samsung Galaxy S3. But you do get something that's a lot friendlier on your pocket. And you can see what the default keyboard looks like here. And here we load our home page. Scrolls just fine. Pinch zooming is responsive. Double tap to zoom. And we're doing this over Verizon's 4G LTE network. Let's check out video playback. This is going to be HTML5 video playback inside of Chrome. We're going to watch a YouTube video, a review of the Sony Xperia Tablet S. You can hear that speaker really loud and full, pretty impressive. We're only just a little over half volume right now.
This is Lisa from Mobile Tech.
Pop it out.
We're going to look at the Sony Xperia Tablet S. This is Sony's second generation Android tablet. And it
Great
packs a lot of
performance
improvement.
over
Most
LTE.
notably, it keeps that kind of wedge shape that made the original.
For battery life, Motorola claims that this is good for 20 hours of actual use time. That is actually using the phone. That doesn't mean 20 hours on the clock while it's sitting asleep in your pocket. In real life, we're finding that it certainly makes it through the day on a charge. 2,000 milliamps is sufficient for that. And if you're a really demanding user who spends a lot of time away from the outlet, you're going to want one of those little external USB kind of charging battery packs for this. Since the battery is sealed inside, you won't be able to swap into spare if you need it. So how about gaming? We're going to test out a popular game here. I'm going to play Dead Trigger and see how it does. Yeah. And the gameplay is just fine, and the colors certainly are vibrant thanks to the Super AMOLED display. So that's Dead Trigger on the Motorola Droid Razr M. And now we'll take a look at the camera. The front camera is nothing to write home about. It is a 0.3 megapixel VGA camera, but the rear 8 megapixel camera is pretty decent as long as you have good lighting. And you can see it doesn't provide a whole lot of light here in the viewfinder, but we've got our fun little bathtub toy here. And we've got all the settings that are available here. Automatic flash, brightness, scene detection, a lot of stuff to play with. And shutter speeds are pretty good. It makes that funny little sound. It makes a loud shutter sound. It goes, pachoo! Sort of like imitating, I think, a old-fashioned flash firing off, but you can disable that sound if you don't like it. And you can see what our images came out like. Kind of dark, but some color in there. Not too bad. Now, outdoor shots, those are much nicer. It does a good job outside. A little bit over-sharpened maybe, but overall, nice color balance, nice exposure. So, decent camera. So that's the Motorola Droid Razr M, available now on Verizon Wireless. Two big selling points are the price, $99 with contract, and the size, just a little bit taller than the iPhone 4S. Very easy on the hands, very easy on the pocket. So for those of you who like Android, but you really don't want one of those giant phones, but you want a cutting-edge CPU, a nice display, good call quality, LTE, you've got it all here for $99. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Visit our website for the full review, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel.